Nsem-Pii TV. Your mom and boss for you. I think say Obia Nsem-Pii TV.
Entrepreneurship maybe.
Nsem-Pii. Yeah, you ask good questions. I hope sir you continue with your good questions.
Be the first to know Nsem-Pii TV.
Our dear former president, John Dramani Mahama. The person is alleging that President Mahama is not able to contest election 2024 on the basis of Article 66 of the Republican Constitution drawn out in 1992. The person is suggesting that Mr. Mahama has ever taken the oath of office twice, because under the Constitution it says a person cannot run for 2 terms of office. A person can be elected president so and so, but cannot run more than 2 terms of office. This litigant is alleging that President Mahama may be offending the law of the 2 terms. We disagree with that. We don't think it is correct. We think President Mahama is eligible. But why do we say so? Let's get to the facts of the matter. Now, this is the court. The writ that's taken out of the Supreme Court. His name is Kenneth Kwabena Ej Koranche. He's the plaintiff. He's in Ruby Street, Achimota, and with his address over there. He's brought the action against the Attorney General, the nominal figure, Attorney General's Department, Accra, against former President John Ajekun Kufuor, against President John Dramani Mahama, and against the Speaker of Parliament. Now, let's get into the details and see what his claims are. What is he alleging? They'll give me the slide in a minute. Yes. So here's Article 66 of the 1992 Constitution, the term of office of the President, and it's as follows. 66(1). A person elected as president shall, subject to clause 3 of this article, hold office for a term of 4 years, beginning from the date on which he is sworn in as president. 2. A person shall not be elected to hold office as president of Ghana for more than 2 terms. Okay. Now, note that it said more than 2 terms. It didn't say 2 consecutive terms. Now, what is 2 consecutive terms? 2 consecutive terms is 2 terms that follow each other back to back, like what Nana Akufo-Addo has achieved and what President Kufuor achieved and what President Rawlings also achieved. So you are elected in 1990, you are re-elected in 1994, and you exit in 1998. That's 2 consecutive terms. The law did not say it should be 2 consecutive terms. That's a very important matter to notice. He said 2 terms. He said a person shall not be elected to hold office as president of Ghana for more than 2 terms. 2 terms, simpliciter, without consecutive, means something different from 2 consecutive terms. 2 terms, simpliciter as it is, means any 2 terms. So if you can be old enough to be 200 years, you can run for election 1960, win in 1960, get defeated in 1964, and come back in 1984. Win election and come in and end in 1988. That will be 2 terms. You see, so in that context, President Mahama is still very good. Let's move on. It continues in Article 66(6). It says, this is the critical one. Whenever the president dies, in the case of Professor Mills, for instance, resigns or is removed from office, the vice president shall assume office as president for the unexpired term of office of the president with effect from the date of the death, resignation, or removal of the president. This is the contentious part, and I think that's what is confusing all of us. We can settle it right here on Good Evening Ghana tonight. So it's as follows. Where a president of Ghana dies, the vice president takes over. We already know that a president can serve 2 terms, 2 consecutive or any 2 terms. So the date on which a president is elected is the beginning of the count, and the date on which it ends is 4 years hence of that date. So in between is 4 years. Now, if a president resigns, that term is still to be run by the vice president, as the Constitution has stipulated. So either the president dies, which is the case of Professor Mills, who died after having been elected on the December 7th of 2008 election. Professor Mills was sworn in on January 7, 2009, together with President Mahama as the vice president in that case. And their term was to expire on the 13th and the 7th of January 2013. That's when the term that they took in 2009 was to expire, albeit an election would occur the month before the expiration of their term, which is 7 December 2012, isn't it? Okay, so that's a 4-year term. That belongs to Professor Mills, and he's running with President Mahama. So in terms of upon whom the 4 years is counted, it's counted upon the president. It's not counted upon the vice president. So a vice president can run 3 terms can run 6 terms, can run 100 terms. And the vice president can run 6 terms as vice president and then run 2 terms as president. So between the president and the vice president, the tenure of office is upon the president. It's counted upon the president. It's not counted on the vice president. That's as far as the constitution is concerned. That also has to be clear, okay? Then we move on to the next stage. So when the president dies and a vice president takes over, he begins now to hold the count of the term upon his own head, no longer upon the head of the president. The president is dead or he's resigned. In the case of Professor Mills, unfortunately, he passed. So Professor Mills is gone. President Mahama steps in. From the date on which he steps in, the term now begins to count upon his head. Therein, this brings up the question. If Professor Mills starts his term as he did, and unfortunately he passes on 24th of July of the election year. So he had done 3.5 years. If Professor Mills passes after 3.5 years of a 4-year term, and President Mahama steps in after 3.5 years, after Professor Mills has passed, with half a year to go for the end of Professor Mills' term, how much of the term do you count on Professor Mills, and how much of the term do you count upon President Mahama? And what do these counts mean? Article 66.7 appears to have settled the matter. Let's look at it. It says, where the unexpired term served by the vice president under clause 6 of the article exceeds half the term of a president, the vice president is subsequently only eligible to serve 1 full term as president. Let's take it again. So that the vice president comes in to serve the unexpired term of the president. Now it says as follows. Where the unexpired term served by the vice president under clause 6 of this article exceeds half the term of a president. So let's understand that. What does exceeds half? So where the president dies, less than 2 years into his term, 1.5 years, 1 year, 1 year, 4 months, when the president dies at that time, less than 2 years into his term, then the vice president, when he takes over, he is deemed to have completed the full 4-year term of the president. And therefore, that vice president is eligible to serve only 1 full term as president. That vice president who takes over from a president less than 2 years into the president's presidency is deemed to have served a full term and is eligible, therefore, to complete only 1 more term. So now let's look at this. That's the law. Let's look at the reality, the scenario. President Mills was elected in December 2008 together with President Mahama as his running mate, and President Mills and Mahama were sworn in on the 7th of January 2009. 2009, 7th of January. Then 1 year was 2010, 7th of January. 2 years was 2010, 7th of January 2011. That's 2 years. And then 3 years was 7th of January. So by 7th of January 2012, both men had done 3 years in the office, but it's counted upon Professor Mills. Professor Mills dies more than 2 years into his term. Therefore, President Mahama has not served a full term. So, he's eligible to serve 2 full terms. And President Mahama served 1 full term from January 2013 to January 2017, and he lost office. So, he's eligible to serve at least 1 more term. So it's a much ado about nothing. You see, it's really a much ado about nothing. There's nothing new to discuss here, and that's why some people are beginning to think that maybe is it an inside job? Is it President Mahama's own PR that is sort of setting it up in that manner or something? Because it's really a much ado about nothing. I'm sure that with this explanation that we have given, all of us have understood clearly that going forward, President Mahama is completely 1,000% eligible to run for election 2024 as the NDC's ticket holder, the flag bearer. We looked at the 1969 Constitution, and it has a bit of a similar clauses in terms of who runs as office, etc., etc. 1979, they don't mention it at all, but for lack of time, I will not dwell too much onto it. So that's our story for the president President Mahama and the court. Now, let's move on to our next story.